Actually, it's possible. We can ask question, and participants can, in fact, unmute themselves. I have given this privilege to all the participants. They can unmute themselves and speak up. So if you ask question, they can speak up and answer.
Okay. Or no, I want them to ask questions. But I think when I'm talking, maybe a global mute would be good to have.
Yeah, right. What happens is that most of them try to ask question by writing in the chat box, and if I find any question, I'll immediately pass it on to you.
Or as a chat. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I can if there is a question to chat box तो open हो जाता है अपने आप से ना.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Good. और अभी hello. मुनिंद्र, are you there?
Yes,
हम
yes.
ये कह रहे थे कि वो भाई साहब, your father, is he attending?
I'll call him. I'll call.
Okay. All right. Bye.
I think it's already time. We have waited for 6 minutes, and I think we can start now. So,
okay. And how many participants do we have?
We have 58 participants over here. I think
Achha.
they will join gradually. They will join.
Okay. All right. So you tell me when to begin. And
Just.
Shall I start now? आप जब कहेंगे तब शुरू करेंगे.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome you all to this session of science and spirituality. In this session, we have with us a renowned scholar and academician and spiritual leader, Dr. Krishnakant Shukla. Dr. Krishnakant Shukla is a physicist, musician, poet, ecologist, and educator. Currently, he lives in Varanasi, giving music concerts and lectures. He is a disciple of the late Pandit Kumar Gandharv and Ustad Ali Akbar Khan. His concerts and interviews have been aired on national television and radio in India several times. His interview on a US radio station has been widely acclaimed. His music concerns consist of singing the poetry of self-realized saints of India such as Kabir, Gorakshnath, Tulsidas, Tyagaraja, Surdas, Meera on the base of Indian and classical music. He has also translated these songs in English and reads out his translation before singing the song in original vernacular. His lectures on spiritual ecology have also received wide acclaim in India and abroad. This is a newly emerging field in the general area of religion, science, and the environment. He is a founding trustee and member of Sah Astitva Foundation, a charitable organization that has built a model eco-village and organic farm in a tribal area in Maharashtra. This project is the practical aspect of his work on spiritual ecology. Dr. Krishnakant Shukla is considered by many to be a national treasure. He is an empaneled member of Indian Council for Cultural Relations, excuse me, an arm of the Ministry of External Affairs, India, Government of India. And this actually entitles him officially to represent India and Indian culture as a cultural ambassador in foreign countries. When Dr. Shukla was 10 years old, he went to UK with his mother, who had gone there to pursue her doctorate. There, he topped in almost all subjects, including physics, math, music, Latin, chemistry, biology, English, and French. Dr. Shukla completed his PhD in physics at University of Buffalo, sunny Buffalo State University of New York. Here, he was appointed as a visiting lecturer and taught full courses in undergraduate physics. He was given an award for excellence in teaching by his university. Dr. Shukla's PhD work, titled Calculations of Electron Effective Mass based on 3D chronic penny model with application to solids, is a pioneering mathematical model to predict the behavior of electrons in simple crystal lattice. After his doctorate, Dr. Shukla joined Hartwick College, Oneonta, New York, as an assistant professor in physics and astronomy in 1991. It was here, while teaching astronomy, that his life took an unusual turn. In 1992, Dr. Krishnakant Shukla resigned from his job as a physics professor and went to Ali Akbar College of Music in San Rafael, California, to study Indian classical music with the great maestro Ustad Ali Akbar Khan. He studied vocal and sarod here. In 1994, he returned to India to study research, record, and eventually perform the bhajans belonging to living oral folk tradition of Kabir and Gorakshnath and other saints. Between 94 to 2004, he also traveled through much of rural northern India to learn and record the folk songs of villages. With the advent of TV and globalization, many of these folk songs and the traditions that nurtured and protected their continuity have become extinct. In his own words, these folk songs contain much wisdom, beauty, and spiritual depth. It is this folk music, coming from the timeless soul of Indian villages, that has given birth to many of the ragas of Indian classical music. In 2003, Modern School Diaspora Initiative hosted a function in New Delhi where Dr. Shukla was honored by the ex-president of India, Shri K.R. Narayanan, for performing an invaluable service to the country in researching and recording these folk songs. As Mr. Shubham Basu, Deputy Director AIMA, mentions about Dr. Shukla's physics and music, that there are threads that might open a physicist's thought on spirituality and spiritual seekers' thought on science. And the best part is Dr. Shukla sails on them with his music. So with this introduction, I now invite Dr. Shukla to the limelight and welcome you, sir.
मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराम एधि वेदस्य माहानि सह श्रुतं मे मात्रः सीनादितेनाहुरात्रा सन्दधाम् कृतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारं भवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम्. So first, my pranams to all the beautiful embodiments of the divine that have joined this session. I like to give pranam to all of them. And thank you, Dr. Manindra Ojha, especially for inviting me. My association with Dr. Ojha goes back a long way. His father, the respected Dr. S.P. Ojha, who was head of the Department of Applied Physics in Banaras Hindu University and is retired now, was very close to me. He was like a mentor to me. And I have a lot of respect for Dr. Manindra's father. And Dr. Manindra, I have known since he was in school. He's a very beautiful, he was a very beautiful as a child, and he is even more beautiful as an adult and doing excellent work. So I thank all of you. And so I have been interested with talking a little bit about the value, and especially the practical value that I like to add from myself, of Indian knowledge systems. Now, as far as I know, many of you have been, most of you are, I think, from computer science, some engineering background, some finance, some mathematics, and maybe a few other subjects. And this is a faculty development program. So you people have, you, you know, already had many sessions in the previous days and then today also. So I will try not to bore you with a lot of information, even though this is a these are information technology people. Uh, there's a famous saying, a story, that if you give a man a fish, he can eat for a day or two, but if you teach a man how to fish, then he can eat for a lifetime. So using that paradigm, I have tried to tailor my talk into giving you, instead of giving you information that is no doubt useful, but to give you actually the algorithms, to use your language, to give very precious algorithms by which you can create or you can learn, um, you know, and create the knowledge that you are seeking, that would help you in whatever field, whether it's as data scientists in deep learning or machine learning or artificial intelligence or whatever you're doing. And especially, I'm talking about those algorithms which were used by the Vedic rishis. Now, many of you, I'm sure, have been abroad for PhDs or postdocs or other. Um, Even if you haven't, now the world is small and people are able to, know about basically about a lot that is going on in the world just by staying in their room because of the internet. So, this idea that your organizers, Dr. Munindra Ojha, had, that in this very heavily loaded curriculum of, I don't know, I've not attended any of her sessions, so I imagine that there'll be a lot of statistics, a lot of, computer science, a lot of, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, structured data, unstructured data, and all that. I did computer science as a physics graduate student. In fact, I wrote all my programs for my physics thesis, but in those days we were doing everything in Pascal, which would be like the Stone Age for most of you now. So I'm familiar, with these concepts. But what I wanted to say was that the value of the Indian so-called, this interesting phrase, Indian knowledge systems, is very high. And some of you might even be surprised to know that you wouldn't even be sitting here today, and you wouldn't have this career if the Indian knowledge system and the rishis of India, especially the Vedic rishis and the Tantric rishis, if they were not there, if India was not there, at least intellectually, philosophically, culturally, and the Indian knowledge systems that arose out of this Vedic culture, if they were not there, then probably none of you would be sitting here today, because as you know, the entire basis of the whole computer world are the zeros and the ones. It's a binary system. And of course, as some of you would have learned, especially the mathematicians would know, that the zero was discovered in India 628 AD by Brahmagupta. And this is interesting, that all the people who you would be calling very respectable scientists like Aryabhat, and Brahmagupta, scientists and mathematicians, they were all actually saints. They were also, usually Brahmin priests who used to study the Vedas and do the practices that accompanied the Vedas. So they were not just theoreticians, but the beautiful practices of yoga and pranayam and meditation to enhance their reflection. They used to do all of that, all of them. Sushruta, for example, in Ayurveda, and Charak, for example. When you see them, they all look like saints and sadhus, with these long dreadlocks and the Rudraksh beads and the dhotis, because there was no conflict in our country. There was no conflict between religion and science, and basically the Vedic Vedic is not correct to call it a religion actually. The Vedic way of life, the Vedic philosophy, because in order to a body of knowledge to qualify as a religion, you've got to have one book, you've got to have one prophet, you've got to have one kind of church or mosque, and etc. But here it was not like that. It was actually the closest thing that you can come to it in the modern world is science itself, because all the Upanishads, they were propounded by rishis in answer to questions. So questioning was encouraged. In a religion, questioning is not, in an official religion, questioning is not encouraged. You are just supposed to believe what the priest tells you, and if you don't believe it, in some religions you can be, your head can be chopped off. In other religions you can be excommunicated. But here the beauty of this body of knowledge of this country is that questioning was encouraged all the time. And the Hindu scriptures are beautiful in the sense that they are the only scriptures in the world which encourage you to question them. They want you to question them. And they want you to say that, look, we don't want you to believe anything. You should grow in spiritually and in your awareness, in your life, in your understanding, in your intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, in every dimension, grow so that you can see with your own eyes. When you're sitting in front of a tree, you don't debate the existence of the tree, right? So that's why they were called seers. Similarly, these beautiful philosophical truths, they were, they used to see them. It was not a product of the imagination. So anyway, so Brahmagupta at that time, actually, even before the Buddhism, there was this concept of shunyata. If there are songs that I sing from Baba Gorakhnath, that written by Gorakhnath in 7000 AD. Can you believe it? That's 9,000 years ago, in which he talks about the Shunya Gad Shahar, Shahar Ghar Basti, in the city of the void. So the emptiness, the voidness, the canvas in which everything can grow, and mathematically, the mathematical correlate was the emptiness is the canvas, the shunya, the zero. So the zero was given by the so-called Indian knowledge system, the Indian rishis, and it traveled. Very interesting. It's a very interesting story if you bother to read about it, how the zero was invented. And it came out of a cultural context, out of the spiritual culture. That's why the spiritual culture is very important. Just like modern science came out of it didn't come out of the sky. Modern science was created by Europeans, right? Modern science, the Schrodinger wave equations and Maxwell's equations, and Faraday's laws and Archimedes principles and Bernoulli's principles, they're all Europeans. They are not Chopra laws and Sehgal equations and Singh and Gupta, and etc., and Ramalingam equations. So it's a Western science, and the Western science came out of the Western culture. So you cannot look at a body of knowledge, even science. You cannot look at science, and of course the technology that comes out of science is, if you think of science as the tree, technology is the fruits that come out of this tree. So you cannot think of speak of science without looking at its cultural context, and we will look at some of that there. So the value of the Indian knowledge systems is multidimensional. It comes from, and there are many examples. And what my sort of suggestion to my beautiful friends here who are listening is that almost all the modern day study of Indian knowledge systems that I know of happens outside of India, at Harvard, in Stanford, in Berkeley, in Cornell, and in Oxford, in Cambridge, and in many institutions in Germany. And I can just I can speak for 2 hours just about this, but almost never from our Indian academicians and Indian researchers. we start looking at our own knowledge systems only after our, the Westerners, the Europeans and the Americans tell us, hey, this is really beautiful, this is very important. Then we start looking at it. So this is something that troubles me, and I have tried to correct it in my own life personally by diving myself into the, into the Indian knowledge systems. And so I would request you to do the same. So the question that I'm, the idea that I would like to put before you is that you meditate and reflect and then work on this question: that what can data scientists and computer scientists and machine learning programmers, people who write the algorithms, the linear regression and all of that stuff, and of course the deep learning, the neural networks, and all those beautiful people, brilliant people who are trying to simulate and emulate the human brain in its functioning, can they actually gain something of value in their own field by delving into the Indian knowledge systems, by looking at the Vedas and looking at the some of our agamas, the tantric scriptures, or is it just a hobby? I'll give you examples of what I mean. For example, my study is physics, as you found out in the introduction. So in physics, there was a lingering question for me, because when my PhD was in quantum mechanics, in the chronic, looking at the three-dimensional chronic Penny model. So it involved a lot of quantum mechanics, and those of you who have had even sort of high school level of physics, can understand what I'm saying. So if you just, in other words, if you just pay attention, that's all. I have full faith in your ability to follow this. If you look at, it's a fascinating story of how modern physics was born, in the early 1910, 1920, 19 and 1930s. Those were the golden years of physics. So almost all the creation of modern physics and all the latest discoveries were done by German scientists. There was one particular group that was really prolific and highly active in this area. Einstein was one of them, and Erwin Schrödinger, Wolfgang Pauli, Neumann, who was a mathematician, actually, he was very important. And then, of course, Erwin Schrödinger and Werner Heisenberg. So, so Werner Heisenberg was quite troubled, actually, even almost driven to the point of, almost driven to the point of depression, because physics is, those of you who know about these things, if there are any physicists or even mathematicians or scientists there, you're familiar with this word reductionism. So like physics tells you that, okay, so all of matter is made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons. So then some physicists will say, okay, so electrons, protons, and neutrons are supposed to be the ultimate particles of matter, but what could they be composed of? So then they discovered that no, actually they are not the ultimate particles. They are made up of quarks and neutrinos and gluons. Okay, so what are these made up of? And then you come to strings. So so then, and what is that made up of? So then you come to some other fundamental particle, and then you say, what is that made up of? So this is an infinite process, and there seems to be no end to it. And so Werner Heisenberg saw this as an absurdity, which he should have, which anybody who's even the least bit sensitive will see, that this is an absurdity. Where is it going to end? I mean, it all began, what was it, Dalton, or I forget who it was, who first proposed the idea of an atom being the indivisible fundamental particle. So this goes on and on. So he heard about Rabindranath Tagore ji in Shanti Niketan, and he went to meet, I think it was 1928, but I'm not sure, one of those years. You can now find all this in Google Baba nowadays. In the old days, you used to go, when you had a lingering question, you had to climb, some mountain in the Himalayas and find some sage sitting in a cave to ask him the question that was bugging you. But now you can just type a few keystrokes and go to Google Baba. So the story that I'm telling you, you can find it there and you can get the dates. I'm not great on memorizing dates. So he went to Werner Heisenberg, went to Rabindranath Tagore, and he studied Vedanta. And from Vedanta, he got the idea of Brahman, a kind of an infinite field from which everything arises and from which everything disappears, and an unchanging field. So not a particle, but an all-pervasive field that extends over the whole universe. And this and many other ideas was what he was looking for. This ended his depression. Then he came back and he said, well, if Brahman is everywhere, then it's in me too. So I cannot separate myself. You see, this was a big problem and still is with many, many scientific disciplines, how scientists are very good at separating themselves from what they study, whether it's a lab rat or a radiation overdose chimpanzee, in a scientific lab, or in a pharmaceutical lab, a monkey. But they're able to physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically separate themselves. But that's the beauty of modern physics. Modern physics says you cannot do that. You cannot separate yourself from what you're studying. You have to include yourself. So actually, that's when Heisenberg came about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is basically the idea that you cannot separate yourself, that you change something merely by the act of observing it. You cannot talk about a reality existing outside the observer. Now, when I read all of this, this is how I found out this story of Werner Heisenberg. Because when I first read all of this, I used to say, hey, this is what Yog Vashisht says. This is what Vedanta says. This is what the Upanishads say. How come these German physicists, 15,000 miles away from India, about almost 100 years ago, were talking about all these concepts which are suspiciously close to Vedanta? And so that's when I discovered, actually, when I read about this, I found out that they were very ardent devotees. All these pioneering physicists, they were passionate about Vedanta. And, Schopenhauer had written about the Upanishads, and the early Germans like Max Muller and some others had translated the Kumara Mangalam and some other, Vedic scriptures. In fact, I'm told, I don't know how far this is true, but the oldest copy of the Vedas written on palm leaf manuscript is not in India. It is actually in Germany right now. So they used to study all the, the Vedanta, and they, so in the day, they would go to the lab and work on all these equations, and they were inventing new physics. They were inventing quantum mechanics, but in the evening, they would go and have dinner and then bring out their Upanishads and read the Upanishads. But this is so this is what I'm saying. So Indian knowledge systems, I mean, modern physics wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the so-called Indian knowledge system, or the Vedic knowledge system. So, and then there are examples, many examples. For example, there was a team of Harvard Law School. Even in law, can you imagine what would the traditional Indian knowledge system have to teach lawyers? Well, the Indian academicians are probably going to say nothing, and it's all religion and it's all Hindutva, they'll probably say. But no, the Harvard people don't have that bias. They have not been brainwashed, like many Indians, against our own roots and against our own history and against our own culture and philosophy. They have not been brainwashed. People in Europe, all over Europe, America, Australia, and New Zealand, they love the Indian knowledge systems, and they are not ashamed to admit it and to come and study it, while we are busy, lining up outside McDonald's and, and buying the latest perfume and the Levi jeans. They are busy, delving into our knowledge systems. So there was, in the 70s, there was a team of Harvard law graduates who wanted to find out the very interesting question: why is there so much litigation in America and even in Europe? Why the courts are burdened? So what can traditional legal systems teach us? So a team from Harvard Law School came to India. They went to the village India. They went to the villages. They knew that if we go to Delhi and Bombay, we are just going to get a bad copy of our own culture. So why bother? We want to study. We want to find something that is different from us. And so they went to the villages and they found the panchayat system. And here they found that the whole emphasis was on compromise instead of, declaring that you are innocent and you are guilty and you go to jail and you go home, etc. This binary, very binary, the Western world is trapped for many generations now in a very binary worldview, you know. So good guys versus bad guys, Republicans versus Democrats, first world versus the third world, A1 versus A2 milk, religion versus science, white versus black, etc., etc. America versus China or America versus Russia, all this binary. But it is India that the Vedic worldview, which teaches us integrative consciousness, to look at the whole, and to look at the unity and focus on the unity and enjoy the diversity as a beautiful variation on the basic underlying unity, the Brahman. So this law school, lawyers from Harvard Law School, they came and they saw, number one, that the people, that the panchayat people who were sitting, like the jury or the judges, they had lived through their life. They knew what it meant for a farmer to lose a cow, for his cow to be stolen, or for somebody to extend the boundaries of their field by 1 foot, and thereby claim the water. So instead of having a judge who British style judge, who wears a wig and a black coat and sits on a high bench and has a hammer in his hand and pronounces judgment on these modern everyday Indians, and he has nothing in common. He's got 5 cooks and 3 drivers and a big haveli, and one gardener, and one security guard. So how is he really going to be able to know and decide, what it means for a farmer to lose his buffalo, or to lose a small part of his land? So they saw that in the panchayat system, it was people who lived that life, who knew what it means. It was the villagers themselves who selected 5 wise men. So they actually, in the 70s, they took this, the Harvard Law School team, they took this and made a presentation in front of the American Congress. And because of that, they changed their laws. And now in America, if you want to sue somebody, if you want to go for a court case, first there is something called the mediation court, where the emphasis is on compromise instead of pronouncing a winner and a loser, this very binary thing. Why not go for a win-win solution? They say कि थोड़ा सा 2 कदम तुम पीछे हटो और थोड़ा सा 2 कदम तुम पीछे हटो, लड़ाई झगड़ा करने की जरूरत नहीं है. So these are the mediation courts, and they got this idea from our traditional Indian knowledge system. Similarly, there are many examples in almost any field. In the field of medicine, for example, a team of doctors from, Stanford Medical Center research. I mean, they are the leading edge of medical research. They came to India. They saw that in the village India, people would wash their hands not with soap, but with soil, with mitti. And they saw that even today, I like to go to the villages, and I go there, and in every village you'll find at least a dozen people who live to be 100 years old, or more, even though when you look at what they eat, they don't have multiple vitamins and zinc supplements and vitamin C and vitamin B12 and all those things that our well-to-do people take all over the modern world. But they just are eating nimona bhat, or just moti rotis, fat rotis and a little green chili pepper and onion. But they live to be 100. Almost every day I see 100-year-old men and women. So we are taught, we are brainwashed. We Indians are brainwashed to look upon the villagers as people who are backward, who need to be brought into the modern fold. We need to go there and build schools and colleges and hospitals and roads and provide them electricity and laptop and all that. We want to bring them into the modern fold. But the foreigners, they don't look at it like that. They say, look, these people have lived in sustainably with their environment for thousands of years. What is it that they know? What is it that the village Indians know that we in New York and London and Tokyo and Beijing and Athens don't know? And they go there as students. It's amazing. I went to Himachal Pradesh in a mountain village in Himachal Pradesh, and there was a team of dentists there from Australia, and they were studying, the dental health of these people. And whenever doctors in the modern world, they want to find people who are, 110, 120, 130 years old, they don't go to San Francisco or New York or Washington. They fly to, this remote mountain villages, in Pakistan, where the Hunzas are there, who eat apricots, and that's how they discovered vitamin B17. And there they find that there are 117, 120-year-old man who is looking like he's 50-year-old, and he's still working, he's still digging the field, he's still climbing the trees. So this humility and this willingness to learn from our traditional cultures, our traditional knowledge system. The reason I'm emphasizing this is I have been through the same education system in India. My school education was in India. A little bit was in England. From the age of 10 to 13, I was in England, but rest of it is in India, and especially in English medium schools and some of the best schools. So I know why. I don't judge. I know why many of our so intelligent and modern educated, state of the art space age Indians, they have such a dim view of our own culture and our own traditions, and they want to speak and dress and eat and behave in Western ways so that they can distance themselves. And this is very sad. This is very sad. I don't blame them, because this is something that we all have been
Dr. Sika,
brainwashed with.
we
Yes.
have a question.
Yes.
I think that is very relevant at this time. Question says from Sonika Jindal, why do we
Yes.
feel the need to antagonize the West in order to prove India's superiority? One doesn't have to be better or more superior than other.
No, I mean, here I'm honoring the Western people, and I'm honoring, was it Werner Heisenberg and the Germans, and I'm respecting them for respecting our culture, So I don't see why she reads this. I mean, I hope she's not referring to me. I'm not antagonizing or criticizing or pulling down the West. And look, we are scientists, so we are just stating facts. And if somebody is upset with the truth, that's their problem. But for example, it is a fact that India was invaded, for 1,000 years, and so if somebody thinks that if I talk about that, or if we mention that, we are antagonizing somebody, that's their problem. But it's a fact that you can check up. All right. So I hope this answers your question. I'm not here to antagonize anybody. So now let me go to what is so in living following the principle of teaching a man how to fish rather than giving them a fish. Let me go to the very root of the matter, and let's look at what is the Indian knowledge system. What is the at the very root? What is the fundamental algorithm, the fundamental thing that has created the Indian knowledge system? Does Jindal ji have any other questions?
I think that answers her. She was not actually
Yeah, look,
questioning you. It's just a basic question. So
yeah. No, we don't have to look. Okay, I want to make one more thing clear, that sometimes in order to teach something, if you want to see an object, you need a background. If you want to appreciate light, you have to know darkness. So sometimes, not as a value judgment, but just as a comparison, when they learn Ayurveda in our modern Indian universities, they are also taught modern physiology and anatomy and medicine, and all those things. They are taught all those things just so that for a comparison basis. So not to criticize, not to antagonize, not to criticize. So here, what I'm going to tell you now is that the I'll do a thought experiment by means of, right now with all of you, I'll do a thought experiment by means of which we will get a very good insight into what is at the very roots of the Indian knowledge system. Okay. So, um, Maybe Munindraji, what I'll do is a lot of the questions will be answered by themselves during my talk, when they see the talk. So maybe we can have a question answer session in the end. Okay. Otherwise, it interrupts the flow, and somebody might ask a question which I'm going to address anyway in my talk later on. So I request all of you to write down your questions, and then we can have a question answer session in the end. All right. So what? Yeah. So now let me show you a slide. Okay, hold on. From current slide, and escape. First I have to share, right? Share my screen. Hold on. You taught me how to do this. Screen one.
Yeah, there would be a button, share button beside start with.
Okay. So now tell me, can you see this slide?
Yes, slides are
this
visible.
Slide?
Yeah, they are visible.
Okay. All right. So now when you come to my part of India, this is the Ganga. In the morning, you will see a lot of people at sunrise standing waist deep in water and waiting for the sun to come up. And they bow down to the sun and they offer a little bit of water to the sun with a prayer, maybe with the Gayatri mantra or some other mantra. They offer this. So in my thought experiment, I'm standing with a physicist friend of mine, and I'm asking the physicist, modern physicist, will you like to get into the water and bow down to the sun? So statistically speaking, since I've been in the community of physicists and also other scientists, the chances are that the physicists will say that, no, I will not get into the water and bow down to the sun. So if I ask him why, he will say, because, the sun is a very big dead ball of gas, with hydrogen and helium, with thermonuclear fusion going on inside it. So, I don't need to bow down to the sun because it's a very big, hot, dead ball of gas. So then the question that that I would ask the physicist is, okay, so can you just explain to me what you mean by that? So he will say, well, it's basically hydrogen and helium, right? And helium is built up of two hydrogen atoms. So it's hydrogen and helium. And then I will ask him, okay, so tell me what is hydrogen? Helium is built from hydrogen, right? So hydrogen is the basic building block. So what is the hydrogen built from? So he will say, well, hydrogen is made from neutrinos and gluons and quarks. So then I will ask him, what are these made of? Again, he will say that they are made of strings, the most fundamental particle according to modern physics. This has not been proven yet, by the way. It's still just a theory, but it says that the most fundamental particle out of which everything in the universe is built is this string. And it has not been proven, but it's a very good theory that everybody likes because of its high consistency and mathematical elegance. So this is what people believe. So then I'll ask him what the string is made of, and he will say, I don't know. So you see, he will have to admit that basically what is matter? What is matter? He doesn't know. If you ask any physicist worth his salt, this is the reply that you will get. Okay. So then the question is, basically, the scientist who is refusing to bow down to the sun, when you really question him or her, he doesn't really know what the sun is. He has been taught to believe, or he has chosen to believe, or he has been brainwashed into believing that the sun is a dead ball of gas. But really, if you question him, he doesn't know what that means, because in the very end, we don't know what we physicists see in the lab is maybe a track in a bubble chamber, or we see a diffraction pattern, in the scanning electron microscope, or we see a digital counter going click, click, click. And after that, there is 1,000 equations because of which we say that an electron or a fundamental particle went by. Okay, there's nobody alive who's actually seen a proton or an electron or a neutron or seen a fundamental particle. Okay, nobody's ever seen that. These are ideas in our heads. So now, if you ask the person who is inside the water bowing down to the sun, why do you bow down to the sun? He will say that the sun is a giant being, who has consciousness. He has consciousness, and once consciousness, and since we are also built of consciousness, and actually in our own body there are all the elements, all the electrons, protons, and neutrons, all the matter that exists in our own body was at the sun time in the womb of a dying star, in the womb of the sun. So essentially, we are built from the same material, and the sun, has consciousness. He has, and once consciousness has a, because he comes from the Vedic worldview. So in the Vedic worldview, once consciousness has a form, it has a personality. So this is the point that I'm trying to make. And this is our Indian traditional knowledge system, especially the Vedic knowledge system. They arise out of this worldview that consciousness is the supreme principle of creation, not some dead piece of matter which scientists don't know how to describe anyway or how to understand. It's what matter is in its essence, it is a mystery. Nobody knows. Okay. So, but according to the Vedic worldview, consciousness is the supreme principle. And once consciousness has a form, it has a personality. That is why, people in India, they bow down to the sun and all the other planets and the trees and the rivers and the mountains and the stars and the earth, and this is very important. This is because this created a philosophy and a way of life which was very respectful towards nature. So this is the main idea that I wanted to share with you, that our Indian worldview is based on this traditional Indian worldview is based on the idea that the supreme principle of all of creation is consciousness. Whereas, not to criticize or to pull down the West, but the Western worldview, in that, it's a mechanistic worldview in which matter is the supreme principle. Everything comes out of matter. If you, ask a modern, if you ask a physicist, they say that we human beings, basically, this is what science is teaching us, that we human beings are basically, machines that have learned to think and write and laugh and make love. But ultimately, theoretically speaking, there's no basis for this. It's only a theoretical belief, like a religious belief, that maybe 1,000, 2,000 years from now, you can have computers that can compose poetry and laugh and cry, and fall in love, etc. But there is no basis for it. This is because, as I said, the supreme principle here is consciousness. Now, now the interesting thing is, what I wanted to tell you was that now Europe and the rest of the world had the same worldview, that nature is sacred. Why? Because everything is conscious, including the rocks. I mean, they have a different kind of consciousness, but the earth is consciousness and has consciousness, and they all, everything, they have consciousness. So now Europe, before 4th century AD, had the same worldview, and so did the Maoris in New Zealand, the Aborigines in Australia, and all the Native American tribes in North America, and all the tribes in Africa, and the Taoists in China, and the Vedic people. The whole world was immersed in this worldview that the earth is sacred, nature is sacred, and this fundamental principle is the same. We are conscious, and so is the world around us. It's a conscious living entity. And because of that, they took the least from nature, and they were very respectful. But in Europe, in 4th century, it'll be too long to go into that, but basically, Europe was Christianized. The first pope was Constantine, and in 4th century, he embraced Christianity, and in that the Old Testament came. And in the Old Testament, this, you can see my screen? Munindra,
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So here, this is important. I'm not. I want to emphasize that I'm not criticizing any religion here. This is not a religious lecture. This is just plain history, and we need to discuss this in order to understand where we are, and in order to understand why the Indian knowledge system is important, so that ultimately we can use it, and we can take the blessings that it can give us for data science and for machine learning and for artificial intelligence. If you want to be good, researchers of artificial intelligence, try to understand natural intelligence also, don't you think? I mean, like, look at a puppy. Nature creates a puppy, and it learns and grows by itself eating garbage, and you can see how it is roaming around and learning, and from its mistakes and everything. If somebody was to today to create a robot that could eat garbage and grow and learn, from unstructured data, there's a Nobel Prize for you sitting right there. But we don't respect nature in the modern world, and that's a lot of the reason why we are in this big soup. And if nature creates something, a doctor can transplant a kidney. A doctor can't grow a kidney. A doctor can, remove an eye and replace it with a glass eye. A scientist cannot create a retina or a liver or a kidney or a heart. You can create a mechanical heart, but a real. So there is a mind, the mind of nature, that universal mind. The rishis had plugged into that. So that's what I'm saying. So here you see, in 4th century AD, when Europe, the Roman Empire, which was huge and which was expansionist and which was ruling over most of Europe, so they embraced Christianity, and therefore this became their official kind of state, because the church and the state were the same at that time. The king of Rome was also the first pope. So this became kind of their official state policy. And it said, the God said, let us make man in our image. Let us make man in our image. I'm reading right now from this slide. So God is saying that only humans are made in our image, and nobody else, like the trees, the plants, they don't have any soul, they don't have any spirit, they don't have any divinity. It's only man who's made in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God himself gave the license to man to use nature as a resource for human consumption. And this idea, over a period of 1700 years, went deep into the DNA of the European race. And finally, when they came to 1700 years later, when they came with the scientific, the genesis religion of science in the so-called industrial revolution, the scientific revolution. These are the writings, for example, of Francis Bacon. Scientific inquiry is a means to understand nature in order to gain power over it and to exploit it for human purposes. This goal, he believed, was divinely sanctioned and to be accomplished with religious zeal. This is Francis Bacon. Rene Descartes, another one famous, he said, by knowing the forces and the actions of material bodies, we can make ourselves the masters and possessors of nature. So you see what I'm saying, that the culture is important, because the scientific revolution came out of a culture that was 1700 years old. And in that culture, it was taught, Baba, black sheep, have you any wool? What can animals give us? What can they do for us? Because God has created humans, and only humans, in his image, and everything else, all of nature, is a resource for human consumption. Nature can be used, nature can be exploited for humans. So this idea in the scientific revolution, unfortunately, it was very unfortunate that it came into this new body of knowledge called science. Isaac Newton and even Charles Darwin, they were devout Catholics, and so this was an opportunity. I mean, this idea that man is made in the image of God and everything else is a resource for human consumption should and could have been left out of the scientific revolution, and that would have been a very good thing. But that didn't happen because the scientific revolution was a revolution of the mind. It was not accompanied by a spiritual revolution at the same time. It was not accompanied by a spiritual growth. So then this happened, and then of course the first was that the passage in the book of Genesis, that an unfortunate event which created a schism between humans and the rest of creation. And the second was this: when the scientific revolution came, this is the basic paradigm of science. Even today, if you basically the way scientists do research, the way they go about, the basic philosophical basis is this Baconian idea that we can exploit nature and use it for our purposes, and we can make ourselves the masters and possessors of nature. Okay. Now, many scientists began to feel uncomfortable with this state of affairs. Like Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, a nuclear physicist, he said the scientific and technological world of modern times is a result of man seeking knowledge without love. And of course, Darwin came with the idea of survival of the fittest, evolution, natural selection, etc. And this idea really took charge of humanity. So in the modern world today, competition is basically, many people believe deep down in their subconscious that it is the law of nature, dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. Certainly our business world is modeled after it. Our political world is modeled after it. Even our arts and entertainment and our sports especially are modeled after it. Our whole education system is modeled after it. But the latest discoveries in science, okay, I will now, okay. The latest discoveries in science, in biology, are showing that actually competition is not the law of nature, it is cooperation. Now they are finding, for example, now they're waking up to the fact that you and I wouldn't be alive if 30% of our own body weight was because of friendly bacteria that live in our bodies and our skin, in our alimentary tract, and they help to synthesize our B vitamins and our calcium absorption and so on. And if they weren't there, we wouldn't be alive. So cooperation, you see, Darwin, when he came up with the idea of survival of the fittest, he saw in the Galapagos, he saw a big tree, and he saw that the smaller bushes underneath the tree had all died out because they were not getting enough sun and water. So he said, I've discovered a great law of nature's survival of the fittest. But what he didn't see was all the animals that had made the tree into a home, all the insects, all the squirrels, all the birds, and all the creepers that were crawling on the tree, and all the oxygen that it was giving to all the other life forms around itself. So the tree itself is a whole ecosystem. This, by the way, is a picture of the peepal tree, also known as the Bodhi tree, which scientists discovered creates 18 kilograms of fresh oxygen every hour. An average size, an average small peepal tree, not a big one like this, but a large one, creates 18 kilograms of fresh oxygen every hour. So it's not a coincidence that the Indian rishis made this tree, which is the world's biggest and most efficient oxygen producing factory. They made this tree into a sacred tree. And in fact, majority of the Indian saints, they got enlightenment by sitting under this tree and similar trees like the burger tree. So anyway, to come back to this idea of why the Indian knowledge systems are important is we didn't suffer from this flaw. As I told you earlier, there's no schism between man and nature. In fact, in the Vedic worldview, which I'm trying to highlight here, man is actually an outcropping of nature. Man is not separate from nature. And it is there, in all the practices in the villages. Every house will have a tulsi tree. They will water the neem tree, the bargat tree. They worship the bargat tree, the neem tree, the tulsi tree. All these trees, it's Chanda Mama, Billy Mosi. They relate. Chuhe Mama. they relate. There's a relation, all the gods and goddesses, the animals and the trees and the plants were always there. They were included into the equation. They were not separate from it. Whereas in Europe, if anybody worshipped nature, actually for 1700 years, they were actually killed by the religious authorities. It was banned. It was banned to worship nature. And in fact, almost 20 million women were burnt at the stake because they used to be herbal healers and all that. So anyway, I will, just come out of this, go back to how do I stop sharing?
On top, you will find that if you hover your mouse on top, you will find there a pop down menu. On the left of it, you will find a stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Okay. All right. So now what I wanted to say, how much time? Let's see. We have we've gone a little over an hour.
It's been an hour.
So yes. So yeah, somebody is saying something. So now we have a good idea about. So now we have a good idea about where this the very basis of the Indian knowledge systems comes out of a respect for nature, a great respect for nature, and to see our continuity with it, and to see how the nature is the mother. Nature is treated as a mother, and therefore there is a great respect for the mind of nature, which doesn't exist. Like I told you, nobody looks at the puppy as a great creation. If you look at it from AI point of view, imagine a robot that could do that, or like the kind of things that the liver does for us. Okay, so the rishis, they recognize that there is a mind, call it the universal mind, or the mind of nature, or the cosmic mind, and let us study that, and let us work with that, and work through that, with that. And so now, for example, Munindraji told me that when he was introducing me to this faculty development program, the first thing that I wrote down was how to do teaching and research. Okay, so now all our notions of teaching and research come from the West. Okay, so we are taught experiment, observation, and inference. I was taught this in class 7 in England. I studied in a grammar school in England as a child. So I distinctly remember my very first class. It was like basically I had goosebumps, even at that age. It was so beautiful. The teacher told us that, we were being introduced to we were being initiated into the world of science. So he said that, the whole of science exists through these three ideas, that you basically make a theory, based on your knowledge, and then you devise an experiment to test that theory, and then you report the results. Supposing your theory turns out to be true, you report that result. If your theory turns out, as a result of the experiment, it turns out to be false, you report that result also, because that is also very valuable information for the scientific world. And this is very beautiful, because this is the same idea that the Bhagavad Gita talks about, that do not be attached to the results. So actually, if you look at science, if it is done in the proper spirit, which is very rare, because as you know, many of you are practicing scientists like I was, I'm still am. You see that very few respectable journals are going to publish your paper if you tell them that you devised an experiment and your theory was proven wrong. Okay. In fact, most people will not even report it, or not even tell. And many people, as you know, will do curve fitting and do all kinds of things, consciously or subconsciously, to say that no, my theory is right. Okay. So because science is done by humans, not by machines, and humans are basically, they're flawed creatures, until we do some meditation and we grow spiritually and emotionally in other ways, we will continue to make these kind of mistakes. So the Vedic rishis, they knew this. They were scientists, because they said, okay, experiment, observation, and inference. Now in the Western scientists, whether it's data scientists or physicists or biologists or chemists, we take our consciousness, we extrovert it. We think that knowledge is something to be found only out there, and then we, all our activities, all our thinking, reflection, collaboration, work involves, the outside world. But the rishi said, yes, the outside world is there and you should do that, and it's very good, but don't ignore the inner world. And we should take these ideas of experiment, observation, and inference into the inner world. And for that, you'll need different tools. You won't need telescopes or microscopes. You sit in meditation, and you look at, try to study your emotions, see where they're arising from. You see a thought, see where it is coming from. Is it possible to think of to create a thoughtless state? Is it possible? What are feelings? What are emotions? The Indian rishis are at least 1,000 years ahead. Let me tell you. I mean, I have looked at books on psychology, modern psychology, and modern psychology is in the stone ages even today. When you look at, for example, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, you as machine learners, as AI people, you would be very much interested in this. Read the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. This is the reason I'm here. I'm here to tell you, not to convert you to Hinduism, right? Some of you who are of leftist background are already, I'm sure you already made up your mind. But I'm here to share with you how you can become better data scientists, by actually studying the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, because they have a very intricate theory of perception. They say that the mind is like a fluid, okay, and it goes out and it takes the shape. This is how we actually perceive. If there is a glass that you are perceiving, the mind is going out and assuming the shape of the glass, and that's why you're able to perceive the glass. And that's why there are people who don't see, sometimes they don't see, even I, sometimes I don't see something that is right in front of my eyes, because my mind is somewhere else. My mind has not gone out and assumed the shape. So the beautiful theory of perception, the theory of the mind. Okay, so according to the Vedas, for example, the mind is not equal to the brain. These are some of the things that Western scientists, Western psychologists, and mind sciences can learn. The brain exists within the mind. The brain is an important organ, but the mind exists outside the brain too. Okay, and when you begin to think in these terms, imagine the kind of AI programs that you will come up with. The kind of AI algorithms you will come up with. So what I mean to say is, okay, so the AI, the machine, the deep learning comes from simulating the human brain, how it works, right? So let us understand the human brain a little more deeply, right? Then we can really create deep learning, because we have understood. We have right now, as the way things stand in Western academia and Western science, we have a very superficial understanding of the brain and the mind. Okay, and so according to the Indian knowledge systems, you know, the mind exists outside the brain also. And now, how do I know this? Why is this not a religion? Why is this not some kind of obscurantic statement? You can Google this. Google the Harvard, prayer experiments. Harvard Medical School, and there are many experiments like this. And it's unfortunate that traditional career scientists, they are shy to talk about it, or they feel ashamed to talk about it. But there are many. The Russians were not afraid to talk about it. The Russians, there's a book called Amazing Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain, and in the late 50s, the Russians did incredible experiments. It's very powerful experiments. I'll talk to you about some of them, and you'll be fascinated. So let me tell you about the Harvard Medical School prayer experiments. What they did was, they found people who had a certain disease. Okay, they divided them into two groups, and they were roughly of the same age. And so one group of patients, they took their photographs and they sent their photographs 20,000 miles away to some volunteers in Australia. And every patient had a volunteer in Australia who had the picture of this patient. And they asked this volunteer in Australia who did not know this patient, right? But he knew the name of the patient and he had a photograph of that patient given to him by Harvard Medical School. And so these volunteers were supposed to pray 20 minutes a day for 5 days a week, 20 minutes a day for these patients, in Boston, who in Harvard Medical, School, who were having this disease. I forget what the disease was. And then there was another group of patients who had no volunteers to pray for them, poor souls. They had nobody to pray for them. But these other groups of patients had these people for them praying in Australia, and they did this over and over again, and there was a very definite statistical correlation to show. And now Muneen tells me that there are some statistics. I had asked him if there are some statisticians here, so you can understand. They were able to show that the people who were being prayed for, their rate of recovery was much faster, much faster. Okay. So similarly, there was, so mind exists outside the brain. Now there is a book called The Secret Life of Plants, in which there are many experiments, where people approach, for example, a tree with a knife, saying, "I'm going to kill you, kill you, kill you," and they had the tree hooked up to extra sensitive, EEGs, like electroencephalography. They could pick up like the skin resistance, the bark resistance of the tree, and they could pick up, the minutest, biomechanical variations, in the biological signals that were electromagnetic signals that were coming out of the tree. And there were many experiments where they showed that the trees, there were huge oscillations when somebody approached them with feelings of violence, or saying, that I will cut you. When somebody approached these trees, with feeling, I'm going to love you, I'm going to feed you, I'm going to take care of you, they saw those changes. So there are, the world of science has really moved ahead. If you would actually open your mind and be true scientists, rather than just dive into a big, toxic swill of reductionism and materialism, and and not be open like the real scientists were, like Gregor Mendel, for example, the father of genetics, was a monk. The Wright brothers, they were bicycle mechanics. They were schools of engineering and aeronautical engineering, and schools of engineering at that time. But they were just simple bicycle mechanics. So anyway, so this the idea. There are many scientific experiments done mostly by the Russians, but in other parts of the world, that have shown that there is a mind existing outside the brain. Okay. Now, according to the current orthodox way of thinking, they say that the mind is the epiphenomenon of the brain. So there is no such thing as a mind existing outside the brain. Again, that very materialistic paradigm that that we are machines, and electrons, protons, and neutrons. Even they don't know what that means. But electrons, protons, neutrons is the only thing that exists. And everything is made up of that, including our thoughts and emotions. But actually, the picture is something else. So there is, for example. So the rishis, they were doing meditation and breathing practices to study their inner states. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to suggest here, that in order to get advantages in your own fields as data scientists, to me, what I understood of data science is basically it's applied statistics. So which brings it very close to physics, actually, to modern physics. My own PhD was in statistical mechanics and quantum mechanics. So so deep learning means deepen the learning, and so to create these machines that can work on unstructured data and simulate how the human mind and the human brain works. What we can get from the traditional Indian knowledge systems is to deepen our understanding of our own minds, and also to create a very valuable link between our own mind and the universal mind. The mind which has created the supernova, and the stars and the galaxies and the sun and the beluga whales and our liver and our kidneys and our retinas, we need to have more respect for nature, and nature is not going to reveal its secrets if we treat it as something that needs to be dominated and exploited, which is actually the subconscious matrix on which whole of modern science stands, unfortunately. Now, I think I will, for the time being, I'll take a break and open myself to questions and answers. Okay. But there is a lot to talk about right now. But I talked about law of medicine. Wait a minute. There was sorry, just one more thing I wanted to talk about. When the Stanford Medical Center team that went to the villages and saw that they were washing their hands not with soap but with soil, they went back to Stanford and started studying, the soil and especially the bacteria on the hand. And from that, they created what's known as, it's a fantastic, fantastic project called the Microbiome Project. And it's a huge revolution in modern medicine. It's a huge revolution because they found it's because of this microbiome project that they found that, the idea that 99% of the bacteria and viruses on this planet are actually friendly to us or neutral to us. There's less than 1% that are pathological. But we, modern humans, in our ignorance, are trying to destroy this 99% bacteria in order to kill that 0.5% bacteria that are pathological. We are trying to destroy, and so we are creating an artificially sterile atmosphere, and this is very bad. In fact, the scientists who are working on the microbiome project, if there is somebody in the neighborhood, if there's a child who has, chicken pox or measles, they take their own children to that house. They want their children to get the chicken pox or the measles, because they know, they have learned from their own studies that the immune system, just like, well, an immune system needs all these challenges in order to grow. Otherwise, that adult who grows up in a sterile atmosphere is going to have a deal with a host of autoimmune diseases, and especially cancer, amongst multiple sclerosis and systemic lupus and God knows what else. So governance, for example, what can we learn? I mean, math and astronomy. What did they learn from Indian knowledge systems? I already gave a hint of that. Zero was created. In astronomy, I taught astronomy at Hartwick College. And that's when I came across a lecture. I didn't know anything about Hindu astronomy. It was an American. Again, you see, it was these Americans and Germans and these Europeans who come and study our knowledge systems. We don't do it, And if anybody does it, we will accuse them of being, Hindutva or, regressive or some kind of religious freak. And that is so sad. That's something that really upsets me, So now here, this is in astronomy. I was amazed that the Earth has something called the precession of the equinoxes. To explain to those of you who don't know about this, I'm sure that you played with the lattu, with the top lattu when you were kids. So you have this thing which is spinning very fast. But if you remember, the axis of the lattu also spins slowly. The lattu is going around very fast. The top is spinning very fast, but the axis of the top is also spinning a little bit slowly. While the top is going to make maybe 50 revolutions, the axis might make one revolution. So similarly, the Earth, the axis of the Earth pointing north and south is also precessing. It's called precession of the equinoxes. Precession of the equinoxes. So this is a 26,000-year-old cycle. 26,000-year-old cycle. And I remember getting a goosebump. I was listening to Srimad Bhagavad somewhere the other day. And, the story of Dhruva, some of you might be familiar with the story of Dhruva. Dhruva was this boy who was, his father, he was mistreated him. So he left home and his mother told him that his real father is Narayan anyway. So he went to the forest. He was like only 10 or 11 years old. And he started chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and he stood on one leg And in 6 months, he did this, a little kid, and Lord Narayan appeared to him. This is a famous story in the Srimad Bhagavat. And then Lord Narayan, he says, what boons do you want? So he said, I want my father to love me and, etc. He gave him some boons. And then he said, I'm very happy with you. I'm going to create a loka for you and, a whole world, a whole sort of universe for you, for Dhruv, this boy. And he said, and you will rule for 26,000 years in this world. This is written in the Srimad Bhagavat. And I sat up because I'm an astronomer and I said, hey, I know this number, 26,000 years. This is the modern computer calculations of how the precession of the equinoxes, the pole of the earth, which is right now pointing towards the pole star, which is interestingly known as the Dhruv Tara in Sanskrit, again Dhruva, that is going to, the whole circle is going to take 26,000 years. So from that, and many other, incidents, I discovered that the Vedas are teaching beautiful teachings of the rishis for the conscious mind, Vedas and the Upanishads, which the German physicists took great advantage of and are still taking advantage of, but and the Puranas, which are called mythological stories, which is very sad because there's nothing, they're not myths. The Puranas, excuse me, just a minute. So the Puranas are actually teaching for the subconscious mind. The beautiful, the rishis were great psychologists, and they said, we all hear that, oh, you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be greedy, you should be compassionate, you should treat your parents with respect, you should treat your wife with respect, you should treat your children as divine entities, you should do this, you should do that, but we don't do it, even though we've read 1,000 books, we've gone to 1,000, self-help courses, because the switches, my dear friends, for all these things, how do you actually become less angry? How do you actually become less greedy? How do you become less lazy? It's not in the subconscious mind, because the switches are in the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind does not listen to linear language and logic. The subconscious mind, the language of the subconscious, if you read Carl Jung and all these beautiful philosophers, they agree with this. In America, there was a guy called Joseph Campbell. He spent 6 years somewhere in New Hampshire. He built a cabin for himself. For 6 years, he was locked in that cabin, reading only the Upanishads. He took all the Upanishads in his cabin and read them. And later on, he became one of the greatest teachers ever to come out of America in the last 30 years. He used to teach workshops on myths and symbols. So the Puranas are teachings for the subconscious mind, very rich material, because in the subconscious mind are the switches. If you want to reach infinity, to a villager, by giving him a mathematical symbol of infinity, that jalebi, you're not going to get much out of him. But if you give him a picture of Lord Vishnu, he understands. All our major gods are deep blue. Think about it logically. Deep blue is the color of a corpse. Why would Lord Krishna and Lord Rama and Lord Vishnu be portrayed as blue? Because the subconscious mind associates the color blue with infinity, the infinite sky, the infinite ocean. So the idea to gently take that mind, gently take the mind from the finite to the infinite. This is the goal. Unfortunately, we don't have any goals. The Western knowledge system, again, I'm only comparing, I'm not judging, I'm not criticizing. The Westerners are the first people to admit this. And they are the first ones to come to India with humility and seek out people who can help them gain this knowledge, But we Indians, we modern educated Indians, we don't want to do that, because we want to be secular, So we want to, ditch this entire, like big mine of gold and diamonds that are buried right under our feet, the knowledge of our ancestors, the knowledge that has taken thousands of years to accumulate, and the lives of whole rishis and incredible beings have gone into that. But no, we want to turn our back to that. So this is what I want to say, that they so this just a minute. So, yeah. So in astronomy, I was amazed that in the Surya Siddhanta, and nobody knows who the author is. It's probably one of the oldest books ever written uh, on, and it's a beautiful text on astronomy. They calculated the precision of the equinoxes. It's a 26,000 year cycle according to modern computer calculations, and the modern computer calculations match to the second decimal place. They were able to these rishis of in astronomy, they were able to predict the eclipses and the weather patterns. How did they do that if this is all obscurantism and all religion, and all Hindutva? Then how did they manage to? Can somebody here tell me, there are mathematicians, how these rishis were able to study a 26,000-year-old cycle, and this is like 10, 15,000 years ago. So this is what I'm trying to say. For example, in governance, for example, what do the traditional knowledge systems have to teach in governance? Well, our king, the way it was structured, our rishis realized that power is a very dangerous thing. That halahal wish that came out of the churning of the ocean, that represents power. When it came out, they could not even find a vessel to keep it in. It was so dangerous that it would destroy whatever vessel that they kept it in. So when they found that, they ran to Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu said, "This is too bad. I mean, even I can't handle this." Then they went to Brahma. He said, "This is horrible. Even I can't handle this." Then they went to Lord Shiva, and he said, "This is because what it is a symbol of power. Power is a very dangerous thing." So Lord Shiva said that, "Okay, because of my wife Parvati, she has a boon of being Akhanda Saubhagyavati. She has, because of her tapasya. This is, you talk about feminism. This is like, look at the respect that he had for his wife. He says, it's only because of her that I, even though this would kill me, would kill me, but I will take it because it won't kill me. But even then, I'm going to be careful, even though I'm Shiva, the Lord of Death. I'm not going to swallow the whole damn thing because even I could die. I'm the Lord of Death, but even I could die." So he kept it in his throat, and that's why we pour water on him, because he feels very hot. So the teaching in this from the Puranas, the Puranic story, is that power, only those people should be invested with power who have woken up at least some of their Shiva Tattva, who have woken up some of their Shiva-like qualities. Like Shiva, for example, is Bholenath. He's innocent. It's beautiful. I'm so grateful to be born in a country that worships innocence. In the modern world, where is the value of innocence? People are so quick to lose their innocence. And when you lose it, it's a huge loss. It's a huge loss. You see the kids running in the street in the villages that I go to with a broken, discarded bicycle tire. And he's running along the road with a stick, making the tire run, and he's in ecstasy. He's jumping with joy. Just wearing torn clothes, covered in dirt, and he's in complete ecstasy. You take this kid, give him a modern education, get him a business management degree and whatever, and send him off to America, and he makes it big, like your who's the CEO of Google or somebody, and he buys a yacht, or he buys an island, or he buys a Learjet. Why does he buy these things? Because he wants that same happiness. He wants to recreate that same happiness that he had when he was running with a broken, discarded bicycle tire as a child. So the innocence is not a small thing. And here, so it's a very important thing. So our rishis recognize and they worship it. Bhole Baba, he's Bholenath, he's the innocent one. And he is, completely unattached, all those beautiful qualities of Shiva. And he welcomes everybody. I haven't finished writing this article. I was writing an article on Comrade Shiva. I don't think there's a bigger communist in this world than Lord Shiva, because look at this. This is what Marx actually intuited. He was not able to get to this place because unfortunately he was born in Germany, not in India. But if he had been born in India, he would have been a Shiva worshipper without a doubt, because when he talked about communism, comrades, like a place, a society where there is no hierarchy, where everybody is a comrade, everybody is a friend. and they have different functions because they have different abilities, they have different talents. Beautiful idea. So so they work throughout the day doing their, somebody is a machinist, somebody is a teacher, somebody is a doctor, but at the end of the day, they are comrades. They sit down and they eat at the same table, right? But in practice, did they do that? I know. Did Jyoti Basu eat with his driver or his sweeper? I don't think so. You know. But look at Lord Shiva. Look at his family. His vehicle is the bell. Okay, the ox. The vehicle of Lord Shiva is the ox, right? And the ox is the natural food of the tiger, who is the vehicle of the Divine Mother, Mother Parvati. But because they are in this beautiful commune created by Shiva, they are comrades. So they get up in the morning and the tiger says, "Hello, comrade ox, how are you?" And the comrade ox says, "Hello, comrade tiger, I'm fine, how are you?" Okay, now the vehicle of Subramanya, the son of Shiva, is the peacock. Okay, and the peacock, the natural food of the peacock is the snake which is coiled around Lord Shiva's head. But they are living in perfect harmony. They know the snake gets up in the morning and says, "Hello, comrade peacock, how are you?" And the comrade peacock says, "Hello, comrade snake, how are you?" Okay. Now, the natural food of the snake is the mouse, and the mouse is the vehicle of, of Lord Ganesha, right? So, but they are living in perfect peace and harmony, okay? Because they get up in the morning and say, "Hello, comrade snake, how are you?" Says, "Hello, comrade mouse, how are you?" And then not only that, but all the Shiva Ganas, all kinds of people who are ghosts, disembodied beings, and also people who were handicapped in some way, mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, people in hellish worlds, people in different states of being, everybody was welcome. Nobody is discarded. So that is, so this is it's in other words, it's not a joke. The Indian knowledge system is actually incredibly sophisticated, and we are very fortunate because it's not like the Europeans didn't have their own traditional knowledge system. The Americans, they all, but it's all gone. They don't have it. You can only find it in libraries and in museums. But due to some miracle, we are very, very fortunate, we Indians, that we have actually access to a living mythology, a living culture that has a continuous history for thousands and thousands of years. Just recently, they did a digging of the Manikarnika Ghat in Banaras, and they carbon dated it to, it's even beyond 8,000 BC. Can you imagine? For 10,000 years, there is a cremation ground for 10,000 years right here in my hometown in Banaras, where there is for 24 hours, round the clock, for 10,000 years, some dead body is being burnt. What kind of vibrations that place would have? There's no other place in the world, there's no other culture in the world. So, like in the field of governance, what the Indian knowledge system teaches us is that the king had all the state power, all the executive power, okay, all the government power, all the military power, all the economic power. The king had that. But the king bowed down and touched the feet of the Raj Purohit, of the head of the main priest, the Raj Purohit, because he had the spiritual power. But the Raj Purohit had to have a vow of poverty, and he had to usually live outside the kingdom in a little hut, and he had to beg for his food. That was the part of the duty of the Brahmins. They had to beg for a living. So there was this balance of power. And so for governance, and then only those people were chosen for governance, power. Only those people were given power who, at least to some extent, have some Shiva-like qualities. Who are Bhole Baba, who are happy with, they are Ashutosh. Shiva is Ashutosh, one who is easily pleased. Ashutosh means easily pleased. So anyway, in the field of governance, then of course in the field of economy, we had, the Indian knowledge system had the genius to create a cow-based economy, not an oil-based economy, right? Because the cow was the economic engine. The sons of the cow were our tractors and also our trucks to transport the produce to the mandis. And the cow dung was not only our fertilizer, it was the food, okay, The cow urine was a fantastic fertilizer, also a very good medicine for many diseases. The cow ghee, the cow milk gave us that's how we got our B vitamins and our proteins and our calcium from there. Okay, and then the cow dung was also used to paint the walls of the huts and cool them down. And I have been told, I haven't seen this paper, but I've been told that some scientists did a research with a Geiger counter, and they found that the walls that are painted with cow dung, they tend to block, harmful radiation, cancer-causing radiation. So if somebody can show me this paper, I'll be grateful. This is what I've heard. But it goes on. Indian civilization wouldn't exist without the cow. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here. The cow ghee was the principal ingredient in all the Vedic sacrifices. And the Vedic sacrifices, for example, there is a mantra in the Vedas that I'm very fond of. And because if you turn any page in the Vedas, any page, you cannot go by one or two paragraphs without the nature and the plants and the animals being included. They were always treated as our brothers and sisters, not as resources for human consumption. So imagine what kind of economy we would have. I'll give you an example. Tacham yo ravini mahe gatum yagyaya gatum yagyapataye devi swastirastuna swastir manushebhya urdhvam jigat bheshajam sanno ashtu dvipade samchatushpade. So they basically, what this Rig Ved mantra comes in the Shanti part, it says that we Vedic worshippers are going to do this yagya by means of which we will offer ghee. Again, this yagya could not exist without the cow ghee. See the importance of the cow. So we are offering this ghee and we are doing this yagya with these powerful mantras and with these powerful meditations and visualizations. And so because of that, we will pull cosmic energy out of the cosmos, pure cosmic energy. It will enter our body through our crown chakra. And we want to distribute this energy, and we want, as the fruits of this sacrifice, the phalashruti, everybody should benefit, not only us, but all the plants. Urdhvam jigatu bheshajam. All the plants should grow and expand and be happy and be prosperous and be healthy. Sanno ashtu dvipade, and all the two-leggeds, means also humans, sam chatushpade, and all the four-legged creatures, let them all get the benefit of these sacrifices. So again, having a cow-based economy, and let me tell you this, I have studied the problem, the fact that we are headed towards ecological disaster, with the extinction of the species, melting of the polar ice caps, and etc., because of carbon emissions and all that. And there is actually no other solution but to bring back the cow-based economy. Sooner or later, it will have to happen. So this is in the field of economics. We got this. Now, in the field of technology, for example, how the Indian knowledge systems were not very active in developing technological gadgetries and technological processes, computers, for example, because they said, and there is proof of that, they said that, look, we haven't really explored this human organism. I mean, and there is no limit to what it's capable of. Those of you who are mathematicians will know about Shakuntala Devi. She could beat the latest supercomputers, the biggest supercomputers of the day, with her calculations done in a second. And for example, those of you who would actually bother to read about Ramanujam, and his beautiful work in number theory, especially infinite series. He worked in infinite series. And when we were taught about Ramanujam, in our schools, because of our so-called secular syllabus, and the government that was existing at the time, they left out some very important parts, which I only found out from a British documentary on Ramanujam. There was a British documentary that I saw some time back, and it was mind-blowing because They used to, when he went to England, Ramanujam, to work with Hardy and some other mathematicians, they were amazed at the beauty of his equations. The mathematical equations that he had discovered, they were just completely out of the world and a couple of 100 years ahead of their time, and they were just in complete awe. And he was from the city of Madurai, where there is a famous temple to the Divine Mother, Madurai Meenakshi. And so they asked him, they said, how did you get these equations? And they said that Ramanujam said that, when I used to go to sleep, the goddess Madurai Meenakshi, I found this, by the way, in only the British documentary, not in our Indian classrooms, and the goddess Madurai Meenakshi would come to me in the dream, and she would give me these equations, and they were revealed. And now that I've studied physics for half my life, I'm not surprised, because even in modern science, even in modern scientific disciplines, almost every major scientific breakthrough, I'm talking about like a earth-shattering or a pioneering or a trailblazing discovery, they were done not as a result of sitting down and doing a reasonable, calculated analysis, but it came from this universal mind, the mind of nature, the mind that the rishis plugged into, that I want to you guys to plug into. So this, for example, Kukele, when he came up with the structure of benzene, he got it in a dream. Archimedes, he went into a semi-conscious state when he was lying down in his bathtub. That's when he came up with the famous Archimedes principle. And Newton, if you read his own writings, he had fallen asleep under the apple tree, when he got this brilliant idea of gravity, and the list goes on and on. That's how, for example, Gregor Mendel got the idea of his, even today, in genetics. Even today, I teach astronomy, I taught astronomy, and I was amazed that in spite of having billions of dollars in telescopes, Hubble telescopes and Mount Palomar and in Maui and Haleakala telescope and all that, from all these universities, almost all the new, discoveries in astronomy, the new supernova like Hale-Bopp or supernova 1987A, are all discovered by people who have this natural intelligence, who have plugged into the natural mind, into the natural mind of nature, the mind that created our liver and our kidneys, and so there are people who are amateur astronomers who don't have anything to do with the university, who buy a simple 16-inch reflector, and they are sitting in their backyard all through the night, so out of love of the subject. So they discover. So what I mean to say is, that is not a mind to be laughed at. And unfortunately, in our universities and our schools and colleges, we don't give respect to nature, or in our traditional Indian systems, all the classes were held in forest academies under trees, instead of these big impersonalized brick buildings, red brick buildings. They were under trees, where they were bathing in fresh oxygen. And of course, they also knew that learning. So in one of the things that Munindraji told me was that how to do teaching and research. Okay, so again, what we can learn from the Indian knowledge systems is, if you read any books on Ayurveda, for example, they are beautiful stories. And see, we have to realize that we are mammals. If we regain our connection to nature and our respect and our devotion and our love for nature, which is what I'm hoping and praying for, then I'm basically, why am I giving these lectures? Why am I giving these talks? Why am I writing? I've given radio shows, and I want to help play my own small part in creating a world where data scientists and artificial intelligence researchers and doctors and stockbrokers and financial analysts and psychiatrists and engineers, and bank managers will get down into the Ganges and bow down to the sun and the planets. They will hug a tree They will water, if not the bargad or the people or the tulsi tree, they will water the giant redwood and go and hug a giant redwood. And when they get out of bed in the morning, they will touch the earth to their heart and to their and say, hello, mother. This is then it's only then and when we were doing this until we were taught otherwise and brainwashed otherwise. Our ancestors were doing this, and this is how they were able to create these incredible branches of knowledge. Incredible. The Bharatnatyam, the Kathakali, the Moni Attam, those incredible architectural feats, the temples in South India, the astronomy, the mathematics. It just, the list goes on and on. So cow-based economy, technology, you see, the technology thing was, they said, how much is enough? Like if we create driverless cars, okay, we create driverless cars, what are we going to do? If we are going to have a robot wash our underwear, are we just going to, drop down on the couch and just develop a big paunch, and die by the time we are 25, we become bald and all our teeth drop, and we are wearing big thick glasses, and we develop spindly legs. So they said, you have this body, play. We learn through play. We are mammals. All mammals learn through play. When I'll tell you a very interesting story. Rabindranath Tagore ji, when he was young, and he was trying to sell the idea of creating an alternative school which would be based in nature, and where children will get a different kind of education. He was not getting any takers. This is back in Bengal. So, but a few people who respected him, who had children, they very hesitatingly and with a lot of fear, they gave their children to him, not more than about 12. And they said, okay, so, and so they were worried, but they gave their children to him for his experiment. But this is how Shanti Niketan was started, by the way. So I'm talking about Rabindranath Tagore. So when he did that, one of the fathers who was very worried about his son, one day he went to see, because the classes were being held in nature under trees, and so he went to see how his son was doing, and he went to see, when he went to that school, he saw Rabindranath ji sitting like this, looking very worried with his hand on his head, and he saw that out of the 12 children, 10 of them were playing and making a lot of racket and climbing on the trees nearby and picking the fruit and laughing and shouting and having a great time, and only 2 students were sitting with the books sitting in front of him and studying. So the father of that child was very, he was upset, and he went to Rabindranath ji and he said, Gurudev, I can understand why you are feeling so bad, because these children are not listening to you. Look, they're playing. He says, no, you don't understand. I'm worried about these 2 children who are sitting with the books and they're not playing. These 2 children I'm worried about them. They are children. They should be playing. So that's what I'm saying. That if you, for example, if you look at the beautiful discoveries in physics done by Richard Feynman. He got Nobel Prize in quantum chromodynamics. You read his book, he's a beautiful writer. He says in that book, he describes how the basic ideas that he got, which led to him getting 2 Nobel Prizes, were not in the classroom. He was playing. When he was a kid, his father would take him into the forest, and he would play for hours in the forest, and he would ask questions from his father. And in another occasion, he was with a friend as a grown man, and he was flipping plates. He was playing a game with these plates in a restaurant. He was flipping them and catching them, and they were spinning in these very strange patterns and interesting patterns. And he began to think about that, and he began to make mathematical representations of the movement, through Euler equations and all that. And he was able to come up with his, eventually, a few years later, with his theory of quantum chromodynamics, which gave him, the Nobel Prize. So then the list is endless. Now, what can we do? How can Indian knowledge systems, to wrap up my talk, how can they help, artificial intelligence research and data scientists, and statisticians and mathematicians and all that? Is, again, I said, we should, just like Brahmagupta embraced Shunyata, we must learn from the rishis. we must at least spend some time in meditation, in getting to know, in calming our mind, creating that emptiness, creating that zero, and because that's where the insights come, and how to create. And secondly, all of the Indian knowledge system is based on a bedrock of dharma, a concept that does not exist in the West, unfortunately. For example, in the West, I spent half my life, in the West also as a physics professor, and I was sad to see that there is no definition of knowledge. Here in India, the Vedic rishis, they define knowledge. There is a definition of knowledge, actually, very interesting definition. They say that knowledge is that which is of benefit to all of humanity and to all the plants and to all the animals and to the earth. In other words, what they meant by this statement was, in other words, they said paropkaram, for the benefit of others, are we studying this knowledge? So what they were saying was that human life is too short for the achievement of many different things, and the number of questions which you can ask about the universe are infinite. There's no end to how much you can learn. Okay, there's no end. You're information scientists. You know about information glut. And how depressing it can be. So they said that so we are going to define. We need, if we are going to start exploring all those questions which come to us, we will need 1,000 years of lifetime. We don't have that. And useful life is very little anyway. If you subtract childhood and old age, useful life, and the time that we spend to eat and to go to the bathroom and earn our living and socialize and all of that stuff, then the actual useful time for research is very little. So they said, our rishis said, we define knowledge to be that which is of benefit to all of life forms on the earth. And so when they got up in the morning, they would recite the Gayatri, which says Om Bhurbhuva Swa Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. This is very interesting. They prayed to the Creator, to Mother Earth, to the universe. They said, give me a dhi, which means sattvic vivek. Then intellect tempered with compassion. That's what dhi means. Buddhi means vivek, intellect that is tempered with compassion. We do not want the kind of intelligence, the kind of buddhi with which we can create a neutron bomb that can destroy all the life forms in a 10 square mile, 100 square mile area, but save all the buildings and the cars and the money, or we do not want the kind of intelligence that would radiation overdose a gorilla and a chimpanzee in a defense lab so that we can study the effects of radiation. We only want that knowledge which will be of benefit to all life forms. So my humble request to all of you data scientists and all you beautiful, brilliant people who are listening to this lecture, and I'm sure many of them know much more about, because I've been away from official academia for a long time. So you know much more than I do. I can learn a lot, from all of you. But you just like the doctors, they don't follow it, but they have a code of honor. At least kuch to hai. At least there is a fig leaf, the Hippocratic oath. That they would fight for life till the very end. They'll never give up. They will never cause a woman to abort her child, and they will never refuse any treatment, and they will never charge for any treatment. You will be surprised. You read the Hippocratic oath. They take all these oaths, and most of them forget it. Once they walk out of that degree room. But so what I'm suggesting is, if we as data scientists, as statisticians, as computer scientists, if we take a vow, in front of the Mother Earth, because no prayer ever goes unheard. Believe me, I can tell you, no prayer ever goes unheard. If we say that, please, let us create the AI, for example, and the deep learning and the machine learning and all these beautiful things, so that they are of benefit to all forms of life. We do not want to create, algorithms that can help a money launderer, or in some other way, or how to, because I know this for a fact. It's very disturbing, but I met a doctor who resigned from one of the corporate hospitals in Delhi because they were teaching a course on how to create a disease. Can you believe that? On how to create a disease so that you can make money out of this. So all this is going on because these people, unfortunately, they they do not respect nature. The scientists, there is no room for nature. There is no room for emotions also. There's no room for the spirit. They've created a whole body of knowledge called Western science and Western technology, where there is no room for divinity. There is no room for sacredness. There is no room for God, and this is a curse on the earth. And we don't have to ditch all of science. We don't have to ditch all of technology, all of academia. All we have to do is make a vow that we will not do anything that will harm another soul, whether it's an animal or a plant. And we pray to the earth. Don't we, we don't have to follow this Baconian idea that we have to torture nature. He actually wrote this. He said we have to torture nature in order for her to reveal her secrets. Instead, we don't go to, if you think of Mother Sita came out of the earth. So Mother Sita is symbolic of the earth and nature. Okay. So, Ravan went to her because he wanted Sita. He wanted all the secrets of nature. He wanted the loyalty. He wanted to dominate Sita. He wanted all the siddhis that she could give. He wanted all of that. But his approach was wrong, because he wanted to do it forcefully. Yes.
Sir,
so I'm finishing. I'm wrapping. Yes.
Okay.
I'm finishing. So here Hanumanji also went to Sita with devotion, with love, and he treated her as a mother. Sita, who represents nature, who represents the earth. And Ashta Siddhi Navnidake Data, Asvardeen Janki Mata, the divine mother, Sita, gave him all the powers that he was looking for anyway, without even asking. He wasn't even asking for them. She just gave it. So we are Indians. And if we go back to our roots and we rediscover and we put into practice our love and devotion for Mother Nature, and we start doing meditation, we start doing yoga, we start reading the scriptures with a fresh mind, the way they do in Harvard and Berkeley, and we will be able to lead the world. And this is how India will become Jagat Guru, not by creating more efficient missiles or more efficient weapons, or bigger and better medicines, but by being true and strong in who we really are. With this, I will beg your leave, and if there are any questions, I welcome them. Thank you.
There were many questions, like one of them asked, how can we imbibe in ourselves, what do we need to change in ourselves to incorporate the spirituality in our body and mind? This question was asked by Mr. Sudipto Mondal.
Yes. So, very beautiful question. I would say, the seed is just respect, just prayer. Just begin with the prayer. You get up in the morning, you just touch the earth, or look at the sun and just bow down. And believe me, you will be astounded with what happens in your life. Believe me, it's because I'll tell you, just like you have if you like in America, I see this all the time. I love America. I love America and Americans. They're the most generous and beautiful people that I've met in my life. So I don't criticize them, but there are some certain things that bother me. For example, they don't know their neighbors at all. The neighbor could be dead, living alone, could be dead for 3 days. Only when the body starts to rot, and then somebody calls the police, they come to know, right? So, the trees and the plants and the animals and nature and the sun and the sky, they're also like that. If you treat them as dead objects, if you believe in the rationalistic, reductionist, kind of leftist, atheistic perspective, and you treat them as lifeless objects, then they behave with you like that also. But just like people, if you treat your neighbor as a nobody, he will behave with you also as if you are a nobody. He won't relate to you. But if you want to discover a beautiful relationship, you have to go to your neighbor and say, hello, how are you doing? Look, I've grown these mangoes in my yard and I wanted to present you some of them, So you develop a relationship. So you bring a gift to nature. Go to the temple. Don't look at them as, just idol worship. It is not, because physics tells you that there is no such thing as dead matter. Modern quantum mechanics tells you that when you're looking at an object, you're actually creating it with your consciousness. So when I go to Sankat Mochan in Varanasi, I'm looking at a Hanuman Murti, which for 378 years people have been going there with the consciousness of compassion, of love, of devotion, of bhakti. And can you believe how that would change that Murti? Just by saying it's a stone, you cannot escape, because nobody can explain what a stone is. Scientists have not been able to create marble in the lab. So, in other words, just by giving something a name, saying, oh, that's just a stone object he's worshipping, or somebody saying, oh, this is just in your mind. No, you cannot say that, because the Yoga Vashisht says the mind is God. You can't just say to somebody, oh, this is all in your mind, and dismiss it, because do you
Sir,
know
can we
what the
have
mind is? Yes.
can we have the
Okay. So,
pleasure of at least a song, folk song? Would you be kind enough?
okay. Okay. All right. You want to listen to a song? All right. Just a minute. Hold on. Any other questions, by the way?
Uh,
Yes.
Hello, sir. I'm
Yes.
Pallavi. Sir, I'm very, very happy about your session. It's very informative, and the days I feel very blessed afternoon session, like from your speech. And sir, you focused on meditation, visualization, and shlokas, but unknowingly we chanting the shlokas, for example, Vishnu Sahasranama, Lalita Sahasranama, and any other shlokas. Sometimes we don't know the meaning of the shlokas, but simply we are chanting that. Then also we'll get helpful, sir, like that.
Yes, yes, Pallavi, beautiful question, beautiful question. Munindra, you must permit me a little bit of time. And
Sure, no
one
issue.
time I read in Believe It or Not, Ripley's Believe It or Not, in the Indian newspaper, that there was some tribe in Africa. They, believe it or not, they said it eats the banana skin and throws away the actual banana. It only eats the skin. So there is benefit in the eating the skin because it has bioflavonoids, but you're throwing out the main thing. So this is a beautiful way for Indians, modern Indians, to very quickly, in a very short time, regain this pristine spiritual state and high states of consciousness and being that we had achieved, in the past, our ancestors had achieved. And this is, if we simply take the trouble to understand the meaning of every word in our prayers, whether it is the Hanuman Chalisa or the Lalita Sahasranam. For example, in the Lalita Sahasranam, there by the way, for those of you who don't know, it was composed thousands of years ago by the Indian rishis. The Lalita Sahasranam is 1,000 names of the Divine Mother. Beautiful names, beautiful names. And it is incredible. It just, every time I read the Lalita Sahasranam, I have tears in my eyes, and I have goosebumps. You know how it begins? It begins with Sri Mata Sri Maharagni, Srimat Sinhasaneshwari, Chitagnikunda Sambhuta Devakar Samuddata. Look at this. Udyat Bhanu Sahasraba Chaturbahu Samanvita. Means, the rishis are saying, this is like 50,000 years ago. They are saying, I bow down to that divine mother. When they meant the divine mother, they meant Mother Nature. This mind, this universal mind that I've been talking about in my lecture. They said, Udyat Bhanu Sahasraba, one who has the effulgence of 1,000 morning suns. Okay, how beautiful. Then look at the next line. They're saying, Chitagnikunda Sambhuta, one who is born from the fire womb of consciousness. Look at this line again. Chitagnikunda Sambhuta, Devakar Samudita Yai Namah. Oh, Divine Mother, I bow down to you, who is born from the fire womb of consciousness in order to fulfill the works of the gods. Now, listen to this. 50,000 years ago, when people in other parts of the world were running around naked, eating raw meat, and living on trees, in this country, the rishis were talking about consciousness. It's only now, in the last 10, 15 years, that University of Wisconsin has developed a consciousness studies program. Scientists in the West are afraid to study consciousness because we don't know how to parameterize it. We don't know how to represent it mathematically, just like because we cannot pick up ourselves. We are consciousness, studying consciousness. So you must take the trouble to understand the meaning. In another place in Lalita Sahasranam, it says, Anek Koti Brahmand Janani Divya Vigrahaya Namaha. I bow down to that divine mother who has given birth to a multiplicity of universes. Imagine this 50,000 years ago, when only in 1955, as a result of the work of this French mathematician Riemann and Riemann's surfaces, they were able to, scientists in the modern world were able to figure out that there is such a thing as parallel universes, infinity universes, Hilbert space, and all that kind of thing. But here, 50,000 years ago, they were saying, Anek Koti Brahmand Janani Divya Vigrahaye Namo. Like that, if we study, if we do our stotras, even the Hanuman Chalisa or anything, Ramcharitmanas, but we study only, we don't have time, study only one half a page, but make sure that you do it with the meaning, study with the meaning, because then the feeling will also come. And once the feeling comes, your spiritual growth and progress is well on its way. Any other questions? Thank you, Pallavi, for a beautiful question.
Sir, I have a lot of questions, but I have one question, sir, please.
Yes.
Sir, you said about the meditation and visualization. Daily, how could we practice meditation and visualization, sir, in specific time or whenever we are free? Because sometimes it could not possible to do at specific time. That's the reason, sir.
Okay, so I'll tell you one thing, that it's like there are many different prakritis, there are many different kinds of people, and they are, according to the Vedic worldview, they are actually not. I mean, according to the modern view, we are just bodies. We are human bodies that are having an experience. But according to Vedic view, we are souls, and each soul is in a different state of evolution. So depending on what the state of evolution of each individual is, there is a different kind of meditation, right? But nevertheless, having said that, there is still something that everybody can do, which will be of tremendous benefit. But build on top of that will be, you will have to find a meditation teacher who can give you who can study your personality, and they also, by going deep into their own meditative state, they are able to look at your sanskaras from your previous life and then prescribe the proper meditation for you, so that you can meet your soul wherever it is in its spiritual journey and take it forward from there. You know what I mean? So one man's food is another man's poison, something like that. But one very good meditation is, for some time, and this is very good for data scientists, for people who are attending this program. So this is a meditation that I'm prescribing for all of you. And please forgive me if I seem a little too too much for you. But if you can sit down even for 5 minutes in a day, and just like as if you pull up a chair and watch a movie, right? Just to relax, you just watch your mind and watch your thoughts. Don't try to control them. Don't try to change them. Don't try to modify them. And don't feel good when it's a good thought and feel bad when it's a bad thought. Just become a witness to your thoughts. In other words, believe me, it is very hard to do, but very, very rewarding. Is try to be in a state where you are not doing anything, not even meditating, not even breathing, not even doing pranayam, not even trying to visualize. Just give your mind a rest by withdrawing the sense of doership, and just watch the thoughts, and just don't say anything. Just watch them as if you were dispassionately watching a movie. Just watch whatever thoughts are coming. And I am very hopeful that what will happen is, pretty soon your thoughts will start to come down. The thoughts are very interesting. If you detach yourself from your thoughts, intellectually and emotionally also, and just watch them, just like you were sitting by the river, and sometimes a flower goes by, and sometimes some dirty piece of material goes by. You just look at it. It's very interesting. You just look at it and don't react. So similarly, you just watch thoughts come and go. Then what happens is, you see, something that is very needed for all of you. Believe me, because I have lived half my life in this world, right? Now I'm not doing that so much, but you need to give your mind a rest. You need to give your brain a rest, and this is true rest. You don't even get this in sleep, because in sleep we identify with our dreams, and sometimes when you wake up not having felt not feeling refreshed is because in your sleep you're trying to work out a lot of problems. Your brain is struggling, maybe you are struggling with a thief or something like that. But in meditation, you just tell your mind, okay, just go do whatever you like. Whatever you like. Think of the worst possible thing in the world. Think of the best possible thing. I give you total freedom. I'm just not going to, and I'm going to permit you to do whatever you like. I'm just going to observe. So this is a very good meditation to do. I think this will help you. And then build on that. It depends on what kind of personality you have, what kind of your consciousness you have. If you are basically a jnani, then you should, do the kind of meditation that Raman Maharishi talked about, which is inquiring into who these thoughts are appearing to. Okay. But if you are a bhakta, it's very beautiful. I myself prefer the path of bhakti because the Devi Sukta says, Ya Devi Sarvabhudeshu Vritti Rupena Sanstita. Vritti Rupena Sanstita. The Devi Sukta says that these thoughts actually are also given by her. They are her forms. So you just surrender your mind and heart to the feet of the Guru or to the feet of the Divine Mother. Then also what you would achieve by sitting in a cave for 20 years, you can achieve in 2 minutes because if you are totally devoted to her and you surrender to her, she can withdraw, the thoughts. In a second, she will like a sponge because they all come out of her anyway. So she can completely withdraw them and you go into samadhi. So, but do whatever you do, but give your mind a rest and practice some in the day. Do something, give some time to not doing anything, not even thinking, not even visualizing, not even pranayam, not even yoga. Just try to not do anything. Very hard to do, but very rewarding. You're talking about deep learning. Deep learning will happen better when you get deep rest. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll sing my song.
Sir, if we get your contact ID, then whenever we have doubts, we could contact through the ID.
Just put Krishna space Kant space Shukla in Google. You'll get everything. You'll get all my contact information. This is Pallavi ji talking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Sir, if don't mind, right now I'm working with BMSC. In any opportunities will be there. If you give some your time, then it will be good. Like we also conduct some FDP in our college. Sir, that
Sure. Okay, so we can talk about that. Just write to me now. Munin ji, are you still there?
Probably, yeah. If you permit, probably I can share your email ID with the participants so that if somebody wants to interact with you, they can directly do so.
Sure. If there is one thing that if my whole talk, the whole point is that if I have love and respect for the plants and the animals and the rocks, I definitely have love and respect, and that is the beauty of the Vedic worldview. That they are all my beautiful. There is no other. There is no other. When somebody asked Raman Maharishi when he was dying, said, "Please don't go." He said, "Are you kidding? Where can I go? There's no other." And when somebody asked Ramakrishna Paramhans, why don't you eat? Because he has throat cancer. Why don't you eat something? He said, I'm eating through the mouths of all of you. So I bow down to all you divine beings. Please share my email with them. They are more than welcome. And I will try to be of service to all of you. And you are all my family. I'm not just saying this as a neat, thing to say. This is heartfelt. You're all my family, and I'm there for all of you. And I can tell you one thing about me, very personal thing I'll share with you, that every time I get up in the morning, I cannot stop. I cry sometimes. I cannot stop thanking God for giving me birth in Bharat, in this beautiful land of the rishis, and for giving me birth in a Hindu family, in a Brahmin family. It is so beautiful. Like my father died when he was 97 years old and he had no disease. He just decided he was going to die. And to be the son of a person who has never eaten a single animal in his life, never tortured and killed and maimed a single animal in his life. What great, for a religious reason or for whatever reason, how fortunate we are to be born in this land of rishis. So in my mind, I have great respect and love for anybody who is born in this beautiful land. Thank you. Now I will sing. Is there time or shall we finish?
Actually we are almost at the end. We have already crossed 20 minutes. But anyhow, this was a wonderful session. And I really thank you, sir, for being here, for devoting so much time, being so diligent that you have continuously been giving us your thoughts. And we are so honored to have you here. It was just in this FDPs, we normally have our speakers who are yogic teacher, or probably they ask us to do some yoga and meditation. But your talk was the most comprehensive one that even I had the chance to listen to. I really thank you.
And
I really
thank you,
thank you.
Munindra, and you are doing this wonderful seva because you also gave up the cushy life of the United States and you came back to India, and I congratulate you on that. I know you were in University of Missouri, and you could have had a 3-car garage and a golden retriever and a swimming pool, but but you decided to come back to India, and lovely, lovely, and to be with your parents and to serve your mother and father. So it gives me great joy to be associated with you. Thank you, everybody. And I guess the song we'll have to let go of the song.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.